The moment my baby was born, my husband took one look and walked out. Please stick with me as I tell you how one man's cruelty shaped the next 10 years of my life. I remember lying there in the delivery room, exhausted and drenched in sweat, waiting for that warm moment every mother dreams of, the one where the father smiles, holds the baby and tells you how proud he is. But it never came. Instead, he froze. His face changed so fast I almost thought I imagined it. His smile disappeared, replaced by something between disgust and fear. The nurses exchanged quick glances, their hands pausing midair as they cleaned the baby. No one said a word, but the air in the room shifted, heavy, cold. Is everything okay? I asked, my voice trembling. He didn't answer. He just stared at our child, then at me, his jaw tightening. And without a single word, he stepped back, turned around, and walked out of the room. The sound of the door clicking shut felt louder than anything else in that moment. I lay there in shock, my heart racing, my body aching, my mind trying to catch up with what had just happened. I could hear the faint sound of my baby crying, but it was drowned out by the echo of his footsteps leaving. The nurse gently placed my baby in my arms, and I looked down at that tiny face, so fragile, so perfect to me, and I realized I was already alone. Before that day, everything had felt like a dream. I still remember how we painted the nursery together. Pale yellow walls, tiny animal decals along the border. He had insisted on assembling the crib himself, even though he kept muttering about the instructions being written by lunatics. We laughed a lot back then. He would kiss my belly every night, talking to the baby, promising to teach them how to fish, how to ride a bike. I thought he was ready. I thought we were ready. But when the moment came, it was as if I'd been living with a stranger all along. The doctor placed the baby in a small blanket, and I could see the tiny curve in the mouth, the way one hand curled differently from the other. I didn't care, I just saw my child. But his eyes darted over those little features, and something inside him hardened. Not what I signed up for, he muttered under his breath, but loud enough for me to hear. My chest tightened. I reached out, holding the baby toward him, waiting for him to take that first proud hold. He took a step back instead. I can't. I'm not doing this, he said, shaking his head. His voice was flat, final. I felt the air leave my lungs. Then the sound, the slam of the door. It was sharp, echoing off the sterile hospital walls, making the baby flinch in my arms. The room went painfully quiet. Even the nurses seemed unsure of what to say, their eyes dropping to the floor. I was left there, sitting up in the bed, holding this tiny, warm bundle against my chest. My tears slid down onto the baby's soft cheek. My arms tightened around them because right then I knew no one else would. The first weeks at home were a blur of exhaustion and fear. My baby needed constant monitoring, checkups, therapy appointments, and a schedule of medications I had to memorize by heart. I learned to cradle them with one arm while measuring formula with the other, my body moving on instinct because sleep had become a rare luxury. The bills piled up faster than I could open the envelopes. Hospital charges, specialist fees, the cost of supplies that insurance refused to cover. Each one a reminder that I was fighting this battle alone. My family helped where they could, but their glances carried unspoken questions, and their voices sometimes hinted at blame I couldn't bear to hear aloud. Outside, the stairs followed us. Neighbors spoke in low tones when I passed, their words slipping through the cracks. Poor thing, such a shame. I forced myself to keep walking, my chin up, even when my stomach knotted. There were nights I sat on the edge of my bed with the phone in my hand, staring at his number. My thumb hovered over the call button more times than I want to admit. But every time I pictured the way he had turned his back in that hospital, and I set the phone down. I would not give him the satisfaction of seeing me crawl back. So I worked. A morning shift cleaning offices. An evening shift stocking shelves. A few hours here and there babysitting for neighbors who didn't meet my eyes. Every dollar went toward keeping a roof over our heads and paying for the treatments my child needed. My own needs faded into the background. Nothing mattered except giving them a chance to thrive, no matter how much it cost me. Outings became tests of endurance. At the grocery store, I noticed how people's eyes lingered too long, drifting to my child's face before quickly darting away as if they hadn't been caught. Some smiled with a forced sweetness that felt more like pity than kindness, while others whispered to the person beside them, their voices just low enough to pretend it wasn't meant for me to hear. There were moments far worse. A mother pulling her own child a step closer to her side, a teenager snickering as we passed. I learned to keep moving, to focus on the small hand gripping mine instead of the world around us. My child never said anything, but I could feel their awareness growing, piece by piece, like a shadow stretching longer each year. The appointments were relentless. Specialists spoke in careful tones, detailing the list of procedures that could be done, the therapy sessions that would be needed for years. Each meeting came with pamphlets filled with smiling models, pretending the process was simple as if it wouldn't mean months of pain and recovery. I signed every form, never letting hesitation show, even when the costs made my stomach turn. One evening, after another exhausting day of consultations and sideways looks, I stood in the quiet of our small kitchen, staring at my reflection in the darkened window. That was when I made the promise, not just to myself but to the little person sleeping in the next room. If the world wanted to see us stumble, I would make sure we stood taller than every one of them. No matter how heavy it got, we would not break. The years passed quietly, marked not by grand moments but by the steady rhythm of life we built together. My child grew into a sharp, curious soul, quick to notice details others missed and even quicker to ask questions that made adults pause before answering. They carried themselves with a kind of quiet confidence, though I could see in their eyes they understood they weren't quite like the other kids. The first day of school was a milestone I'll never forget. I walked them to the classroom door, my heart pounding as I watched them step inside with a backpack that seemed too big for their small frame. When they turned to wave, their smile was a little unsure, but it was there, and that was enough. There were moments of pure joy, like the night they brought home a ribbon from the science fair. It wasn't first place, but it was earned, and the pride in their face was brighter than any medal could be. We celebrated with pizza on the couch, laughing until our stomachs hurt. Over time, we created a world of our own within the walls of our modest home. Movie nights with homemade popcorn, inside jokes that no one else understood, evenings spent working on school projects at the kitchen table. Outside there were challenges, but inside it was just us. A team of two who knew exactly what the other needed without saying a word. Whatever the world thought, it couldn't touch what we had built. It happened on an ordinary afternoon, the kind where nothing seems remarkable until it is. I was leaving the hardware store with a small bag of supplies when I heard a voice behind me. One I hadn't heard in a decade, yet recognized instantly. I turned and there he was. Time had changed him. His hair was shorter, streaked with gray, and his suit looked expensive. On his arm was a woman at least 10 years younger, her smile polite but distracted as she scrolled through her phone. For a moment neither of us spoke. His eyes flickered with something that might have been surprise, but it shifted quickly into a smirk. "Well," he said, drawing out the word, "how's the kid?" His tone was casual, almost bored, as though we were discussing the weather. I felt my fingers curl around the paper bag until the edges dug into my palms. My pulse pounded, but I kept my face calm. "They're doing fine," I answered simply, offering nothing more. His gaze lingered, waiting for me to elaborate, but I didn't give him the satisfaction. He chuckled under his breath as if my brevity amused him and turned back to his companion. I stepped past them without looking back, the sound of my own footsteps steady even though my hands trembled. Some encounters are over in seconds, but their weight lingers long after you've walked away. The days after seeing him again stirred something I thought I'd buried. I tried to shake it off, but pieces of information began to reach me in ways I hadn't expected. A friend of a friend mentioned his name over coffee, followed by an awkward pause before leaning in and saying, "You know, he wasn't exactly alone back then." It turned out he'd been involved with another woman even before I went into labor. The timing was deliberate. His disappearance wasn't a moment of panic, it was an escape already in motion. That truth settled in my chest like a stone, heavier with each retelling I heard from different mouths. What cut deeper was the rest of it. He had spent years reshaping the story to suit himself, telling anyone who would listen that I'd driven him away. He claimed my temper had made life unbearable, that the baby wasn't even his, a lie so sharp it almost stole my breath. People I barely knew had heard his version before they ever met me. I sat with that knowledge in silence for a long time, turning it over in my mind like a jagged rock. Anger came in waves, but beneath it was something colder, steadier. I realized I didn't just want him to know the truth, I wanted everyone else to see it too. It wasn't rage that took root in me, but a plan. Not rushed, not loud. Something that would take time, patience, and precision. I wouldn't chase him, but when the moment came, he wouldn't be able to outrun what he'd done. Once the decision settled in my mind, I moved carefully. I began gathering pieces of the past like a puzzle only I knew how to complete. The hospital still had records. Every note from the delivery, every signature, every detail that tied him to that day. I requested copies and tucked them away in a locked box at home. Next came the paperwork proving without a shadow of doubt that my child was his. The test had been done long ago, but now I kept certified duplicates, sealed and stamped, ready for any challenge. I found the old bills with his name listed alongside mine, proof that he had once been involved before he vanished. I reached out to a few people from those years. The nurse who had handed me my baby, a mutual friend who had visited at the hospital, even an old neighbor who remembered him moving out overnight. They hadn't forgotten. Their words were steady, their memories clear, and each one added weight to the story I was building. All the while I said nothing to anyone who might let it slip. I smiled when I had to, kept conversations light, and carried on with my daily life as if nothing unusual was happening. But behind that calm surface I was setting the stage. When the moment arrived, I didn't just want him to answer to me. I wanted the people who had believed his lies to watch the truth unravel in front of them. Not in anger, but in a way that left no room for excuses, no space for him to hide. The gathering was already in full swing when I stepped through the doorway, my child beside me. Conversations paused for a moment, the kind of ripple that moves through a room when someone unexpected appears. I caught sight of him near the back, a drink in hand, laughing too loudly at something someone had said. My child stood tall, shoulders squared, eyes scanning the room with quiet assurance. We walked together toward the cluster of people surrounding him. He noticed us before we reached him, his smile faltering for the briefest second before he forced it back into place. "I didn't realize you were invited," he said, his tone light but edged. "I wasn't," I replied, steady. I turned to the small crowd, my voice carrying just enough to draw in the listeners nearby. "Since we're all here, maybe it's time some things were cleared up." From my bag I pulled the folder. The documents, the signed records, the test results. I laid them on the table between us, my words deliberate and calm as I explained each one. The witnesses spoke up, confirming what they had seen all those years ago. His partner's expression shifted from polite curiosity to disbelief, her gaze moving between us as the pieces fell into place. He tried to interrupt once, but the weight of the evidence was heavier than any excuse he could muster. I saw the moment the mask slipped, a flicker of panic in his eyes before he looked away. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. The truth was loud enough on its own. I gathered the papers back into the folder and slipped it into my bag. His mouth opened as if to speak, but I was already turning away. Whatever he had to say, I didn't need to hear it. The reason I'd come wasn't to collect an apology. It was to walk out knowing I'd taken back the dignity he tried to strip from me years ago. Outside, the air felt different, lighter somehow. My child walked beside me in silence until we reached the car. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, they asked, "Did we win?" I looked at them, at the strength in their posture, the clarity in their eyes, and I smiled. A quiet, certain smile. "We already did," I said. As I started the engine, I thought back to that day in the hospital, the moment everything had fallen apart. But now the image of me lying there, abandoned and afraid, felt like someone else's life. I wasn't her anymore. And I never would be again. Do you think I did the right thing by walking away without hearing his excuses, or should I have stayed and listened? I'd honestly like to know what you would have done in my place.